Hello, everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express, where we take a close look at events in our neighborhood that have an impact on India. Today, we're looking west and looking east. It was one of the most violent weeks in Pakistan. Supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan held demonstrations, literally brought traffic to a standstill. On Sunday, the separatist Balochistan Liberation Army bombed a Chinese convoy, ramming a bomb-laden car just outside Karachi International Airport into a Chinese convoy, killing two Chinese nationals. Despite the political protests and the terror attack, Islamabad is gearing up to host the 23rd meeting of the Shanghai Co-operation Organization in Islamabad on October 15th. Top officials from China, Russia, and India will be there. India's Foreign Minister, S. Jaishankar, not Prime Minister Narendra Modi, will be attending. And Baloch separatists have already made all kinds of, impromptu remarks, which are a little, rattled everyone. The main agenda, ironically, is cross-border terrorism. The one single factor that India says is holding it back from normalizing ties with Pakistan. And yet it's a visit that, despite Mr. Jaishankar repeatedly saying there will be no one-on-one talks, has set off speculation of just that. Maybe a pull aside, a handshake, the beginning of a thaw, we don't know what's going to happen. Much the same applies to China. Jaishankar has said that India-China relations are at a crossroads. He's called on China not to change the status quo, to respect the border areas, respect the line of actual control, even going so far as to say that, after all, the rise of Asia can only happen when India and China have a positive dynamic. Prime Minister Modi concurrently is visiting Laos for the ASEAN East Asia Summit. It's part of India's Act East policy, and all of this in the run-up to BRICS Summit in Kazan later this month, which Turkey may be set to join. So is China the primary driver behind these visits? Is India ensuring it does not get sidelined geopolitically by a China that is primed for global dominance? Talking to us today are Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, a Pakistani political scientist, author of the fascinating book, Military Inc. Inside Pakistan's Military Economy. She's a research associate at SOAS, South Asia Institute. She previously served as the inaugural Pakistan Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center between 2004 and 2005. Welcome, Dr. Siddiqa.
Thank you.
Also with us is Dr. Srikant Kondapalli, Professor of China Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He's fluent in Chinese, author of a number of books on China, and a regular columnist and writer in various publications. Thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Kondapalli.
Thank you.
And Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, former High Commissioner to Pakistan in 2009-2013, when ties with that country were at its lowest. He also served in Uzbekistan. The ambassador's column, the AFPAC Digest, is a great primer. He's also the author of the book, India's Pakistan Conundrum, Managing a Complex Relationship. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you.
So my first question to you is to you, Ambassador Sabharwal. Mr. Jaishankar's visit to Pakistan, I mean, the foreign minister has said multiple times that it's not a bilateral visit, but top-level officials have said that it's a downgrade from what it should have been, what it could have been if the prime minister had gone. So Mr. Jaishankar has made a couple of side swipes. He said he'll behave himself. That was probably a side swipe at Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, who made a huge noise about Kashmir when he came to Goa for the SCO. How do you see it panning out in Islamabad, Ambassador? I mean, this no talks until terror ends dictum, is going to be very difficult to navigate. What do you think is going to happen at the SCO?
Well, on this issue of downgrade, let me clarify my what I believe to be the case. There are two different forums. One is the head of state meeting, which is the highest body, and then the heads of government meeting, which is the second highest body, which is meeting in Islamabad now. As you know, there are countries within SCO that have executive presidency, so they have this distinction. And our prime minister has been attending, I think, head of state meetings in the past. Heads of government meetings have been attended at ministerial level, and I think some of them, to my knowledge, were attended by Jaishankar in the past. So in that sense, there is no downgrade.
Okay.
A suspense arose, a problem arose because the meeting is taking place in Pakistan.
That's right.
As you know, since August 2016, when Rajnath Singh went there to attend the meeting of SAARC interior ministers, no senior Indian functionary has gone to Islamabad. Then our decision in 2016 not to attend the SAARC summit due in Islamabad in November that year stalled SAARC, and it remains stalled. So the question mark was, would India send anyone at all? Or, there is always this possibility of virtual participation that has happened in the past.
But SAARC is virtually dead, isn't it, Ambassador?
That, of course, is a different subject. Now, the government then announced that Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, will be attending the meeting. So that's speculation, indeed. But that set in motion another speculation, whether there'll be bilateral engagement. Now, Minister, as you said, has clarified that he's not going to discuss bilateral relations, etc., etc. I don't believe that, Minister has said that he'll be civil, as he said in one of his.
He said he will behave himself.
A civil person, he'll behave accordingly, etc., etc. So I'm sure he'll try and avoid a situation, where there is much of man.
So you basically are saying, Ambassador Sabharwal, that you do not see a pull aside of even a 10-minute, photo of anything of that sort happening.
Let me say very briefly. Now that doesn't rule out an impromptu pull aside short meeting to gauge each other's intentions, etc., etc. But the more important question is, what can an interaction achieve at this stage? The fact that Pakistan is fixated on India withdrawing its August 5, 2019 move for any engagement, at least in public, that is their position. There has been no climb down. And I think because of the political polarization, a climb down has not been possible. Shahbaz's speech in the UN General Assembly was not very helpful.
That's right.
Pakistan is so internally absorbed. I wonder if they are in a position to take any major initiative on India relationship. On our side too, the discourse has hardened. Our political discourse, tapping into the justified anger of the Indian public at Pakistan, has shrunk the space for diplomacy with Pakistan. So a more important question is, what can an interaction achieve? But probably we'll come to that later.
Let me throw that question to Dr. Aisha Siddiqa. Do you think it's time we ended this impasse? Do you think India and Pakistan should talk? And as Ambassador Sabharwal says, is it even possible to start that process? I mean, is this a realistic goal? Is it doable? Could we start small by, maybe reappointing our respective high commissioners, opening a small window by allowing visas, which a lot of people talk about.
Well, it goes without saying that Pakistan and India should engage. Question is, will they engage? The answer is perhaps at the moment, no. There isn't a pressure on either side. Both sides are busy. And I personally feel the reason that Mr. Jaishankar has decided to go, or the government has allowed him to go, is because I don't think they want to create an impression to the international community. Both India and Pakistan have partners, friends, not just enemies, but friends outside in the world who want a conversation to happen. So Pakistan has always been saying, and has been saying for at least a couple of years now, look, we want to trade, we want to talk. Because India doesn't want to talk. So it's a small first step. Jaishankar coming to Pakistan, even after he has made the sharp comments at the UN General Assembly. So, firstly, he says that he's going to be civil, try to be careful. I question that. If an opportunity arises, will he hold back? and will then the Pakistanis hold back. But I think right now there is a pressure on both sides to present to the world that there is a keenness to talk, though there's nothing practical that I see coming out. Despite the rhetoric in Pakistan that yes, we want to have trade, we want to have ties, we want to have talks, there's no real pressure. I mean, Pakistan is busy minding its economy, trying to fix it. India is just having series of state elections. Mr. Modi is trying to find some comfortable feet to land himself uh, for his, for after his elections. So I don't think there's a pressure on either side. But in terms of gesture, that it's an SEO meeting, it's an important forum where India doesn't want to miss not being at the forum. So it's gone there. I don't expect much coming out of it.
I get that. I get that. Dr. Kondapalli, Jaishankar has met multiple times with his Chinese counterpart, and Delhi has been making all the right noises. I mean, has China reciprocated in any way? I mean, what is your assessment on why India has sent its foreign minister to attend the SCO? Is it to keep Russia happy, or because Russia has played a very big role in ensuring that China doesn't actually go ballistic on India?
Yeah, well, two factors that you mentioned, two separate ones. One, the China factor, and the second is what is India's, compulsion to attend the meeting. The first, whether the Chinese have reciprocated, no, not yet. There was the Jaishankar's meeting with Wang Yi in Astana. There is also the meeting in Vientiane earlier. And then National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met with Wang Yi in Russia.
Yeah, that's right.
There were these high-level meetings that were happening. Yet we have not seen any specific comments in regard to normalizing relations with India. President Xi Jinping has not uttered a word so far, despite the 4.5 years of the situation on the border following Galwan incident in June 2020. We have not seen the Chinese troops following the disengagement and de-escalation, which the defense ministries have actually agreed to before February 2021. Yet there are 3 areas where the Chinese have still been mobilized heavily across the eastern Ladakh, Aksai Chin border areas. So there is the no let up on the Chinese front on this. Also, in terms of the Indian view in attending the SEO meeting, now you have the situation in Israel, Iran. There is also the Ukrainian, conflict in relation to food prices, fertilizer, and fuel. That is very important for the global south, including India.
That's right.
There is the urge to find some kind of consensus even within the SEO, because SEO combines major energy producers as well as energy consumers. So there is an energy club within the SEO, and it is quite possible that we may have some outcome during this meeting, because the Israel-Iran conflict is expected to enhance further the fuel prices.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That is going to pinch everybody, and that is probably one more reason. Second, of course, is terrorism, as is reflected in the Karachi blast.
Yes.
The Chinese have actually not cooperated on the counter-terrorism front in the Al-Qaeda Committee of the 1267 in the United Nations Security Council. So it is after a lot of persuasion, nearly 10 years, that they finally came down to the view that all forms of terrorism should be condemned, and the subsequent development. So we should expect also, in addition to energy, terrorism-related issues to be the focus.
That's important. Dr. Siddiqa, would you like to comment on that? Because I mean, there's been no let up on terrorism, not just in the Jammu area, but also within Pakistan. I mean, there seems to be a coming together of all of these forces. You know, the Balochistan Liberation Army and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, as well as the Afghan Taliban, and now they've banned the Pakistan Tahaffuz movement.
No,
The
that's the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement,
sorry,
which, by the way, is not a terrorist organization. It's a political organization. Now, banning
Why
that
is it
is a
banned?
separate matter. That has happened because they had called a jirga on 11th of October. In fact, while we speak, Ali Amin Gandapur, Chief Minister Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, has agreed to sit with governor of his province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, and also Interior Minister. So, banning Pashtun Tahaffuz movement is really because, the Pakistani state is very uncomfortable with any popular political movement which reminds them of that, there could ever be a conciliation between Pashtuns on both sides of the border. So it's a different matter. TTP, of course, is banned. Then there is BLA. Pakistan puts more pressure on Balochistan Liberation Army. And in fact, it's putting more pressure on Baloch political movements like, Maharang
Right.
Baloch.
Yes,
So
what
that's
stopped from leaving the country.
that's a separate matter. But I think what has happened is in Karachi is a reminder of two things. One, that the Baloch, wary of the Pakistani state and wary of its partnership with China, are ready to attack the Chinese. And there are numerous regional stakeholders who are being named, who are suspected of helping Baloch. I mean, nobody's sending Baloch terrorists to fight, but there is financing, because what one has seen is that since 2012, BLA's performance or BLA's capacity to to acquire hard targets has definitely increased, and they go
Now,
and attack in Karachi.
in addition, Dr. Siddiqa, they also seem to have a string of suicide bombers, who keep
Yeah,
detonating themselves at these security points,
yeah.
aimed
So
specifically at the
yeah.
Pakistan.
So
And not just the Chinese. I mean, even the Pakistan army is being targeted.
yeah, but let me remind you, it was a year or maybe a year and a half ago when a young suicide attacker at Karachi University had, targeted Chinese teachers there at Karachi University. So that was, in fact, the first suicide attack carried out by involving Baloch, and that to a woman against Chinese. So, of course, Pakistan's one main concern is security of the Chinese. And the other is that, the Chinese are also coming to town, and, security has to be renegotiated. The terms of security have to be renegotiated between China and Pakistan.
Not just that, Ambassador Sabharwal, if I can come to you, the importance of China to Pakistan is integral to its economy. Rising from from the clutches of the IMF and so on. Because I mean, with this investment in Gwadar and the BRI and CPEC, do you think that these attacks on the Chinese is going to rattle China? And will it be a conversation that will come up, I think, for sure, during the SCO?
No, I think we should understand that with CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, now China is more deeply invested in Pakistan than ever before. And, much as its economic logic has been overblown, this is a strategic linkage for China, linking Xinjiang to the Arabian Sea through Pakistan, bypassing the maritime choke points in the east. So it's an extremely important linkage for China. Now, these attacks are obviously a problem in the bilateral relationship. As you said, it's a relationship which has now become one of dependence in financial terms. Earlier the Americans used to play that role. Now Pakistan looks more and more to China. They've been parking money in Pakistan's central bank to shore up its reserves. They have had to ask China to roll over some of the loans repayment due to them to arrive at a deal with the IMF. But that's a separate issue. The terrorism issue naturally is a big problem. The Chinese have been speaking quite openly about it. They have expressed their anguish at it. Pakistan has assured them time and again that it will take steps, but they have not stopped. Now, if you are asking me whether Chinese are going to pull out because of these attacks or be rattled, as you said, I don't think so. They'll stay the course because this linkage, as I said, is extremely important. This will.
But there are reports coming in, Ambassador, that the development, I mean, the building of these roads and ports and so on, all that infrastructure that is required has been going very, very slow. I mean, it's practically,
Yeah.
nothing
Look,
at all
it's
after these attacks. And China has said that it will take part, make joint efforts to ensure the security is tighter around their people. So, and I don't know
yeah.
where that would go. If I can just come back to you, Dr. Siddiqa, because I know you have to go. Could you also just go back to India, Pakistan for a minute? I mean, in the past, we've had, even when, even before the Bombay bomb blast, before 26/11, before any of that, I mean, when Nawaz Sharif tried to make peace with India, you had the army pulling the rug. And vice versa. When Musharraf tried it with Manmohan Singh, he came up against Lal Masjid and the madrasas. So, and yet there have been constant conversations between India and Pakistan on the sidelines. We've had so many interlocutors, Tariq Aziz, and so many. So, do you think that why is it that that has not happened anymore? Even when General Bajwa was there, he wanted to make some kind of a pact with India on trade. Why is it that that has stopped completely? It can't be just because of Article 370.
See, General Bajwa started, talking about having links with building relations with Pakistan, yet he was the one who kind of stopped Imran Khan's
Cross-border
government's
terror.
hand initially. No, he didn't just stop it. He also stopped trade as well. Also, let's not forget, Pakistan was the first to withdraw its High Commissioner. And if relations have to go on, there have to be indications and talks enough for Pakistan to say that, all right, I'm sending back my High Commissioner. Let's kind of resume relations. There isn't any indication as yet that, Islamabad is there anymore. Now, why? I don't think that either side sees. I mean, Pakistan, let me tell you Pakistan's story. I mean, Pakistan feels Modi is not interested and there's nothing which is being offered. Yes, elections in Indian held Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir have just been held. But, restoring status of a state, etc., a conversation that Bajwa seemed to have had through back channel, by the way, between him and Doval, or through what was his name, General Asfandyar Ali Patodi and Doval. Yeah. So no. Yeah. And so the thing is that nothing since then has happened. There is nothing. I mean, there is too much burden on General Asim Munir at the moment for him to kind of get excited about trade with India. There is nothing or talks with India. I think when both sides are ready and there is a sense that both sides will be ready. And meanwhile, in the last 6-7 months, what has happened is that, Indian government claiming that, we entered your territory, ghus ke mara, those kind of statements don't help. So the response of the government is fine. So what I think that we are going to see in beyond SCO is a stable, you know, instability with no war, but nothing more than that. I mean, I'm not going to kind of bet any more than that.
And you don't see sort of backsliding on Pakistan either.
No, I don't think so. I mean, neither side is right now ready. I mean, what's the purpose? I mean, Modi government is settling in. Pakistan is settling in too.
Ambassador Sabharwal, I know you have to go too, so but I'm just going to ask this before I go to Dr. Kondapalli. The same question that I asked Dr. Siddiqa, which is basically the fact is that there is no the back channel seems to have dried up completely, which shows that neither side is really interested in resurrecting in holding talks. But the second aspect is whether, given these sustained attacks on the Chinese, on Chinese workers working in Port Qasim or Gwadar or any of those areas on the highways, are going to basically, sort of step away from this, even though they say otherwise, and just keep a nominal presence.
You're asking about the Chinese keeping a nominal presence.
Yes.
Okay, no, as I said earlier, that's an important linkage for them, and I don't think they are going to walk away. You mentioned earlier that the implementation of CPEC had slowed down considerably. That's true.
It has.
Because it hasn't lived up to its initial promise of $62 billion they had spoken of initially when it was announced during Xi Jinping's visit to Pakistan. The investments have been much smaller, probably maximum $20-25 billion. There have been many controversies surrounding them. There have been these security issues, etc., etc. And I think what the Chinese will do is they will stay the course insofar as the physical linkage from Xinjiang to the Arabian Sea and to the wider Indian Ocean beyond is concerned. That's extremely important for them. They seem to have slowed down on some of the other things, for example, exclusive economic zones, etc., which haven't made much progress. Many independent power producers came. Now that has resulted in a huge circular debt. That's become a problem of its own. But I think their emphasis on this physical linkage will continue.
That's a good point. But do you also see the fact that the Pakistan army is so bogged down with all these terror attacks that they don't seem to have the inclination to, to push their own, I mean, Shehbaz Sharif's government into keeping the eastern border quiet because they have to deal with a western border which they've never had to deal with. They've never had to fight on both their fronts.
Well, that I believe is a logic that applies to both sides. It applies as much to Pakistan as to us. After all, the ceasefire restoration in February 2021 came about because of the imperative on our side to keep our western border a little calm and focus on the Chinese side, and for the Pakistani side because of their internal preoccupations, their preoccupations on their western border. That logic remains on both sides. The ceasefire is holding by and large, except for an uptick in Pakistan-sponsored terror in the Jammu region in the recent
That's
past.
right.
But beyond that, we have not been able to build upon that ceasefire for various factors that I mentioned earlier. Incidentally, I can stay a little longer if you wish.
No, that's fantastic. So, Dr. Kondapalli, if I can just come to you on Pakistan's China dependency. You know, the Karachi blast was definitely aimed at all of those the China icons in the country. But why has the Pakistan government sort of pushed that to one side, all these concerns, and is still pushing forward with the SCO? Is it such a big deal for Pakistan to host it? Because does it mean, I mean, it's going to be a very big event for them, but it will also see Iran come in. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. I think when Pakistan joined SEO, firstly as an observer and as a member in 2017, it was basically the Chinese who were pushing Pakistan into this. And with the expectation that Pakistan would be able to interact with Russia, which has also revised its Pakistan policy in many ways in the last 5, 6 years, and also with the other Central Asian republics.
Yes.
So the Chinese consideration was that this would expand the Chinese influence in the SEO at the cost of Russia to an extent, but also to balance India. So that was their
Mm.
consideration since the beginning. So it
To
appears
counter
that
Russia.
Pakistan,
Am I hearing you correctly? You're saying that it was a plan to counter Russia.
exactly, in Eurasia, the traditionally since Tsarist Russian times, Soviet times, and the Russian Federation times, they were hosting a lot of things in Eurasian region.
Ah.
Today, China has become one of the major factors in Eurasia with the Belt and Road Initiative projects, as well as with energy pipelines and the China Central Asia summit meetings since last
Mm-hmm.
May. So there is a Chinese proverb or an ancient strategy. They have 36 strategies. Out of
Mm-hmm.
they apply the one strategy towards Central Asia, that is Fanka Weizu, which means reversing the role of a guest and a host. China
Oh.
has been a guest to this region for centuries. They hardly had any linkage with Central Asia, Eurasia, other than the Silk Road of the 2000 years ago. However, today they want to marginalize Russia in Eurasian region. So this is a major problem for Russia. This is
That
also
is a
the
very
reason
interesting
why
aspect.
Russia wants to bring in India into Central Asia. So when Russia supported India, this was one of the main considerations that China is supporting Pakistan, and also it is consolidating its hold over Eurasian region.
That's fascinating. That's very, very interesting. It's a completely different aspect. But we don't even factor into the India-China, Russia triangle. So, Ambassador, working with Pakistan no longer seems a priority as we all believe for India. It's no longer seen as a number one threat. It's always China that is now looming, that sees as something that we can't tackle really head on. But there are many in Pakistan who say whether it's a China proxy or not, improving India-Pakistan relations and resolving these disputes, it will make all these militant groups practically irrelevant. I mean, it will any resolution on Kashmir. I mean, any kind of a deal on Kashmir, for example, would help. I mean, don't you think? I mean, or is that and apparently the Pakistan strategy is that they would like some kind of conversation on Kashmir, that this is part of the what the army has wanted so far, but then now doesn't even have the wherewithal to even reach out to India because they just can't. I mean, is that too much? Is it too far fetched? Because I mean, it's only 8 issues, right? I mean, you have Siachen, you have the Sir Creek boundary, you have the Indus water issues, and they have come very close during the Vajpayee time and during Manmohan Singh's time.
Yes, this whole business of resolving Kashmir. First of all, let me tell you, my own impression was, and I've stated it in my book, that Kashmir does not have resonance with the Pakistani public as it might have had at one time. It's
That's
being
very interesting.
justified by the Pakistani establishment. Kashmir and the India relationship was not an issue in the Pakistani elections, either in 2008 or 13 election. When I was there, I closely followed the 1824 elections also. It was focused on Pakistan's internal affairs. Second, Pakistan talks too much about resolving Kashmir, but has never shown the courage to resolve it. There have been pragmatic and forward-looking solutions thought of in the past. For example, during the Simla talks, we now have it on record, from those who were present there, there were discussions on, eventually freezing the existing ground reality, which is probably the only feasible, peaceful solution if you were looking for one. Any other solution would involve a conflict. Now, Bhutto went back. Then we had the back channel understandings, which were arrived at before my tenure in Pakistan, where the broad philosophy was in the same direction. Not we didn't go as far, those understandings, but they were steps which would have carried us in that direction. And I was, as Indian High Commissioner, I was following up the matter with them time and again. Let's take these understandings forward. But they didn't show the courage to take them forward. So, when they say they wish to resolve
So
Kashmir,
this is the civilian government you're talking about, which did not have the gumption
yeah,
to.
the civilian government was there, Zardari and company, and they always said we want to take it forward. But I think the problem was from the then Chief of Army Staff, Ashwag Parvez Kiani. He had been involved in the back channel process as DG ISI under Musharraf. But then by the time,
Yes, I know personally that this is true because he used to have almost daily conversations with Benazir Bhutto. And she used to tell me exactly what he says. He was trying to be the peacemaker between her and Musharraf. And of course, it
yeah,
didn't
so,
work.
as DG ISI, they, that's a very key position in their system. So they do various things, but he had changed his mind. So when they say that they want to resolve Kashmir, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. This is just to keep on maintaining low-level tension with India, which the Pakistan army finds is in
Are
its
they
own
doing that on China's
constitution.
behalf? Are they doing it on China's behalf? Is it basically China wanting to keep India on its toes,
Well,
off
look,
balance?
my own impression is that the Chinese position on Kashmir has changed in accordance with their equations with India from time to time. So, they have again gone back to endorsing, as per UN resolutions, bilateral understandings, etc., etc. This is after August 5, 2019. But what the Pakistanis keep on saying is their own position, not necessarily at China's behest. Of course, there is a nexus between them. There is a close defense cooperation. The interoperability between the armies, armed forces of the two countries has improved tremendously. China is now supplying almost 70% or more of Pakistan's armaments. So in that sense, it's an extremely important relation which has an impact on us. But whether the Chinese are encouraging them to say what they are saying, I don't think that's necessarily true.
So basically, what you're saying is that the whole formula which we had in the past of this porous border and all of that is just nothing but talk. There's no question of that going forward.
Look, I mean,
Obviously.
now the realities have changed. One of the understandings was maximum autonomy on both sides,
Yes, yes.
mind you. And the understanding was that it would be apply as much to Jammu and Kashmir on our side as to this thin sliver of territory, which they call Azad Kashmir within quotes, and as well as Gilgit-Baltistan, so-called Gilgit-Baltistan, which is also our illegally occupied territory. Now that is something which has changed with our step. Whether Pakistanis would have brought about that autonomy or not, that's a separate question. But that has changed with our August 5, 2019 decision. But I must say that the logic of, eventually, as I said, the only feasible peaceful solution is to to freeze the existing territorial reality. Anything else will involve a conflict. So who knows, the idea may come up again in future in some form or the other, may have to be adapted. Not exactly the understandings that were arrived at in the back channel, but there could be in a different form.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's very interesting. I have heard from my own sources that the US does want India and Pakistan to sort of mend fences, at least begins a little bit of a men's, basically because I think they also do not want to lose their toehold in Pakistan as they have in Afghanistan. If I come to you, Dr. Kondapalli, could you tell us whether India's look east policy goes beyond optics? I mean, at ASEAN, we're talking up a trilateral highway with Myanmar and Thailand. And there's a key infrastructure project in Myanmar which is not on the agenda. So what will we, what, I mean, I can understand SCO as you've explained. India has got a position there.
Yes, I think when Look-East policy was initiated by Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, it was with the expectation that we would link up with East Asia, Southeast Asia, in terms of FDI, foreign direct investments, exploring markets in this region, as well as connect to the economies, bubbling economies like Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and also these small, newly industrial economies like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei, and others. I think that policy has actually paid off because one of the largest investors in India is Singapore.
That's right.
So there is, a huge prospect here. And when Prime Minister Modi went recently to Singapore, there is a promise for $55 billion of investment, prospective investment from Singapore. Also, Japan is one of the largest investors in India. They have kept $120 billion on the table for the DMIC, Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, also the Ahmedabad to Mumbai high-speed railway, and other major projects by JBIC, Japan Bank for International Cooperation, as well as JICA. Delhi Metro, for instance, is financed by the Japanese ODA. In fact, the Japanese ODA to India is one of the highest in the world. It's not Southeast Asia, it is not East Asia, but towards India, the ODA is quite substantial. Likewise, South Korea is both in economic and defense related. They are giving us a lot of minesweepers, and we have a lot of prospective, economic and trade relations. While bilateral trade is very low compared to our biggest trading partners, it is East Asia, Southeast Asia that we are looking for. So I think the Prime Minister's visit is geared up for this trade investments, market exploration, as we move forward with semiconductor industry. And this is where we are looking at. Taiwan is one of the biggest investors in semiconductor industry. We have had agreements with PSMC on semiconductors to be manufactured in Assam and in Gujarat. By next year, we should be seeing these chips coming out of these factories in big numbers, 45,000 chips a year. That is the production rate that these are. But we also added the 1991-92 Look-East policy. Now it has become Act-East policy in terms of our naval deployments, maritime connection. And as the Quad decided 2 weeks ago, we are doing the countering illegal fishing and also the Coast Guard related exercises to control illegal fishing and other.
On that point, Dr. Kondapalli, I would also like to talk about the new Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba. I mean, he's made some pretty intriguing remarks on an Asian NATO, which is decidedly, obviously, ranged against China. And India has strengthened ties with all of these countries, Vietnam and the Philippines and so on. How much of this is really posturing, and how much of this is really actually building an alliance against China, a military alliance against China? Although we've said time and time again that it's not a military alliance against China.
Well, the fact of the matter is that there is militarization in South China Sea. Some 3,200 acres of built-up area by China in the South China Sea. And their objective is basically to declare South China Sea as a territorial sea, which means Indian ships cannot pass through South China Sea in future if the Chinese declare it is their territorial sea. Not just Indian, American ships, Japanese ships, Australian ships, Korean ships, or even Southeast Asian ships.
Are you expecting it to happen anytime soon?
That is the effort that China is making. It is very hard to control, sea control 3.4 million square kilometers. Yet China today is deploying a lot of surface to air missile batteries. They are having 4 runways in South China Sea islands, and they are militarizing the whole area. As you have also seen, since Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan,
yes,
they have been sending a lot of at least 20 to 30 aircraft almost daily to Taiwan Straits. We have also recently a Chinese military aircraft landing in Japan. So when the Japanese Prime Minister is speaking about defenses and collaborating with other countries, he is the most worried Prime Minister because the Chinese landed their aircraft in Japan.
So India and Japan have a lot of talking to do, probably on the sidelines of ASEAN.
And preparation in this regard. They need to do much more preparation than they're just talking about deployment of some forces.
Ambassador Sabharwal, if I can just come back to you, do you see Russia's role? What is Russia's role vis-a-vis India? Because we've constantly talked about it being one of our oldest allies, and that stood by us through thick and thin. Does it now need China more than it needs India? And will that see, especially at this upcoming summit, the BRICS summit at Kazan, which is being hosted by Russia. This is where Prime Minister Modi will come face to face with the Chinese president, and of course, our best friend, the Russian President Vladimir Putin. So, how do you see that meeting playing out? And after that, Dr. Kondapalli, please do comment on that too.
Yeah, I think he'll be the best placed to tell you about that meeting that you have asked for. But I think this whole logic of Russia not being able to carry on its relationship, it's an important relationship. Let's face it.
With
It's
India,
an old partnership. We have had an extremely important defense relationship. There have been oil purchases in the recent past. Strategically, it's been an extremely important relationship for us and remains so. It's not either or that we are building relationship with the Western powers. Therefore, we have to give up this relationship. But that's the point I was making. This whole logic that because Russia has an important relationship with China, there has been a degree of dependence, yes. This would somehow influence their ability to carry on with their relationship with us, or because we are developing our relationship with the United States or other Western powers. Therefore, we cannot carry on in the manner in which we did earlier with Russia. I think that's a little exaggerated. Relationships change, priorities change. Our defense production procurements are far more diversified today than in the days when we were almost completely dependent either on the Soviet Union or on Russia. So things are changing, and I think we should keep that in mind. If I have your permission, then may I leave?
Yes, thank you very much, Ambassador. It was
Thank
very
you.
wonderful to join in. If I can come back to Dr. Kondapalli. So is India walking into what China sees as its hunting ground? I mean, it's not just in Central Asia with these countries, but now it's in Southeast Asia, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. I mean, China is still seen as our major threat, and what do you see happening at the BRICS summit, for instance, in Kazan?
I think the SEO meeting in Pakistan, I think India is trying to put forward a positive spin into the gloomy, developments around the Ukraine conflict, the Middle East conflict, West Asian conflict, or technological disruptions. If you look at the previous India hosting the SEO summit, I think the agenda was quite clear. India was trying to push through transport corridors, and so was planning for this IMEC,
That's
India
right.
Middle East
Yeah,
Economic Corridor.
Yeah.
And as we are speaking, India had sent ships to Iran for the Chabahar and other areas to signal to Israel that these are not areas of conflict, shouldn't be areas of conflict.
I see.
And India's agenda is, of course, connect through the Central Asian republics through Afghanistan, because Pakistan is not allowing the transit areas. So we are looking for the higher trade-related volumes with Eurasian region. And these transport corridors are very important for us. Secondly, in the SEO summit that India had held virtually, we have put forward the startups. Instead of getting bogged down with terrorism and other bad news, what India is trying to suggest is to put forward a positive agenda in terms of the startups and the unicorns in the Eurasian region. Thirdly, India has also tried to develop Buddhist circuits in these regions so that we have relative stability through tourism and other investments in
So basically, it's a
infrastructure
civilizational link-ups.
Exactly. When SEO leaders meet, most of these are authoritarian leaders. And India is trying to bring in a soft touch by having these on the agenda and trying to bring in an alternative paradigm, not just about terrorism, about multipolarity, about being critical of the United States, as mostly SEO is seen as, but put forward something concrete, and so that the civil society in these Eurasian region gets strengthened and democratic aspirations also get strengthened. So that is the Indian idea. I think Dr. Jaishankar would push through counterterrorism, but also, most importantly, the transport corridors. How do we expand tourism through these turbulent times? And as a requirement for that, the hotel industry, the other tourism-related aspects. So those are the ones that are would be the focus.
There is an uptick in tourism to the Central Asian states rather than Europe. It's quite interesting to see that. But tell me about the BRICS summit, if you could, Dr. Kondapalli. What is it that Russia expects to get out of BRICS? And if Turkey does join in, will that change? I mean, bring in a very powerful actor, isn't it? I mean, it's the country that basically is set to challenge Israel, which is now trying to dominate the Middle East.
Well, last summit meeting in Johannesburg resulted in expanding the BRICS by 5 members. Six, the Argentinians were also supposed to join, but they did not due to an election within the country. But Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran, Ethiopia, and one other country joined the BRICS. Now it is the turn, actually the Russians wanted, or rather declared, that nearly 45 countries are planning to join the BRICS.
My God.
And so the Russian agenda is basically to expand the multipolarity. And since they are facing the issue on Ukraine and the NATO expansion, they wanted to possibly build a club against the NATO and the United States through the multipolarity debate. That's number one agenda. Number two, they also want the BRICS to form some kind of a semi-military alliance. And thirdly, they also want the energy club to be established in the BRICS so that Russia could expand its energy sales along with some kind of an arrangement with Saudi Arabia. Thirdly, Russia wants the BRICS to also promote alternative credit rating agencies. Now, there are 4 credit rating agencies in the world: Standard & Poor, Fitch, and 2 other credit rating agencies. Most of these have been investing in China because of the United States signaling. Now, India is attracting a lot of FDI, but Russia has not seen much investment. And in fact, due to the sanctions, Russian economy is exposed to the globalization and its adversarial effects. So Russia wants a kind of credit rating agencies.
And it also wants to move away from dollarization. They want de-dollarization.
Exactly. This is also one other agenda that they have. Although Trump said that he will impose tariffs on all those countries which are doing de-dollarization. So if he becomes the president. So there is a lot of debate about de-dollarization and a BRICS currency. Russia wants to promote a BRICS currency, but India and China are not prepared for this because India thinks that Chinese renminbi will dominate the transactions without the alternative, arrangements within the BRICS. BRICS also doesn't have a free trade area, and partly because India has a problem with this because China is dumping goods with their subsidized products. So India is lukewarm to both de-dollarization and the BRICS currency.
Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, the whole dynamics now, we have so many summits and meetings that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister are attending. And we have to wait and see how it all develops, particularly because there is the elections in America are going to be a very, very huge factor in the coming months, and how we all deal with the rising power of China and attempts by the West to diminish Russia's reach. Thank you very much, Dr. Kondapalli, for taking part in the show. Thank you, Dr. Aisha Siddiqa and Ambassador Sabharwal, for this primer on the rocky road ahead for India and its immediate neighbors. Thank you, viewers. Do click on the New Indian Express and the Global Express icon to watch and share.